Breaking news out of Below Average Joe's HQ as one Dominic Salee and Noah Baker have agreed to a deal that will reinstate Noah back into the below average bet slip. However, Dominic understands, though, that there is a price that must be paid since, well, I'm going to stop talking in the third person. Since I did not reach my goal of 2 straight weeks of 3 for 3 on ghost bets, he said a price must be paid, blood must be spilt in order to get you back into the bet slip. So the deal that has been agreed upon is that basically my comeback to the bet slip will happen for UFC 285. John Jones versus Cyril Gane, a massive pay-per-view. Tons of opportunities on that card. However, before that card, we will do a verbal sparring where me and Dominic go tit for tat, question for question, 10 questions, all surrounding the world of MMA, mostly. Mm-hmm. For every question on that episode, I must indulge myself into a single blazing wing from B-dubs, all the way up to the 10th question. 10 questions, 10 blazing wings, no water, no milk, and then I can be reinstated. Dominic, care to comment on this breaking matter?
Yeah, there's only one way that it could have been done. Ghost bets hitting aside, and this is the way. This is the way for Noah's reinstatement, and now all of you are loyal listeners and viewers and fans and community that we've built over these past 2.5 years. You get to be a part of it. You get to witness greatness, the biggest comeback in MMA podcast history, and it goes down right here on this channel. Stay tuned.
Well said. Well said. Is it are blazing wings made with ghost pepper? Because that'd be kind of funny if my ghost bets couldn't hit, so then I have to indulge myself to ghost pepper.
You know what? They may be now. I have a feeling that they changed it to either ghost pepper or Carolina Reaper. Either way, your asshole's going to be burning.
Yeah, this is true. I have a decent spice tolerance. Well, by decent, I mean like when it comes to B-dubs, though, I feel like their sauces are pretty hot. So I can get up to like mango habanero, and like I can do it. You know, I can do it. I can withstand it. But it definitely is hot. I've had blazing wings one time, and I my ability to talk was minimal. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this goes because it's 10
Very
of them.
true. Yeah, and it's a show that requires you to talk. So
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, episode 266 starts right now. Welcome back, everybody.
hello.
Thank you for joining us, episode 266. I am one half of your hosting duo. My name is Noah Baker. The man to my right, he is fair, but he is just. That is Dominic Salee. Dominic, how are you doing? We are coming on the heels of what is a massive weekend for the UFC, and I think in a lot of ways it lived up to the hype, Dominic. So how do you feel less than 24 hours following that event?
Oh man, it's been a little while since I had a nice little fight hangover, but today I do. But it's a good one. No one that I'm not like down in the the slumps. I'm tired. I'm trying to wake back up. No, I'm very much vibrant here today for the show. UFC 284 was quite historical, man. Back in Australia, that crowd from start to finish was incredible. One of the best crowds that there has been since the UFC has went back onto the road and traveling places after the pandemic. So that was incredible. The fights were great. The main event, as we're about to talk about, somehow exceeded the expectations that we had already set for it. It was just historical. It was lovely to get to witness a night like that as an MMA fan. And, you kind of said it best. That card is really kickstarting a very, very massive, next 2, 3, 4 months for the MMA game and for the UFC specifically. So if this is any indication, they've set the tone. They've set the standard. I'm very excited, Noah. How are you this Sunday afternoon, this Super Bowl Sunday afternoon?
I'm doing good. You are completely correct about the fight hangover. However, at the same time, I don't know if I can ever. I don't know if I've ever been able to say I've had a hangover that I'm like, hell yeah, I enjoy this. But this one, I'm kind of like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of when we played football in high school, and you go into morning lifting and film the next day, and you're so sore. But man, I used to miss. I miss that feeling of like feeling like you really did
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Like you worked hard, so you're like your whole body's sore. What is it? The lactic acid buildup
Yep.
in your
Right.
muscles or whatever. So, like that is a bit of what I'm feeling today. I feel accomplished sitting on my couch for 8 hours, all in a day's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But feeling good. So, as we said, we're going to go over all of UFC 284. We have some fight announcements to talk about as well. A little bit of rumors for the Ultimate Fighter this season. So
Hmm.
it all starts, though, Dominic, with that main event from UFC 284. Islam Makhachev retains his lightweight title. He gets to win via unanimous decision over the featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. I'm just gonna, as the start of the conversation, Dom, I'm just gonna present you with some history here. Okay,
Okay. Hmm.
you can debate the term super fight or mega fight. There's no doubt this fight applies, but
Yep.
in terms of what fights in UFC history apply to that, sure, you could really pick and choose like some of the biggest fights in UFC history and argue that they are a super fight or a mega fight. However, I think the most basic way to determine a super fight, champion versus champion, is
Mm.
obviously a super fight. And Dominic, there have been 7 of those now in UFC history after last night. And I'm just going to
Mm.
go through the list for you, and
Okay.
you can tell me, and we'll when I get to the end, I'll ask you a question. So,
Of course.
our last one, Dom, UFC 232, Amanda Nunes versus Chris Cyborg.
Hmm.
Before that, the first fight night on ESPN, Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw.
Hmm.
UFC 226, Stipe versus Daniel Cormier.
Yep.
UFC 205, Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor. UFC 94, GSP versus BJ Penn. And technically, this one, I'm throwing this one in there, even though it really isn't, it's not UFC champion versus UFC champion, but it was billed as champion versus champion. That's UFC 75, where the UFC's light heavyweight champion at the time, Quentin Rampage Jackson, fought the Pride champion, Dan Henderson, who had just signed to the
Mm.
UFC.
Okay.
So it was billed as champion versus champion. So I threw it on there. But you can argue if that really should be on there. So that right there, that is 7 super fights in my eyes. If you are champion versus champion, that is a super fight. That's a mega fight, no matter which way
Mhm.
you draw it up. You can argue for a lot of other fights. Contes, DC versus John Jones, all these, yeah.
Of
GSP,
course.
Michael Bisping, all those.
Right.
But basically right there, those are the clear 7 super fights in UFC history. My question for you, Dom, is super fight in UFC history.
Oh, the best you say, man. Um, I probably
There's
go.
definitely
I
recency
guess.
bias to this one, but
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of recency bias is the problem. But man, I mean, we're talking a fight in last night that went all 5 rounds, tit for tat, razor close, all the way down to the final judges' scorecard. So yeah, I mean, I think I probably do go there because you know what I would say like the only one that would like rival it in terms of like a full on fight would have been the third installment of DC Stipe, but that one wasn't champion versus champion. You know what I'm saying? So I think if we're talking just those 7, which is crazy by the way, 30 years we're going on in the UFC and there's only been 7. That's quite an elite list there. I would have to go this one and it's just number we're talking not only was it champion versus champion, but then you add in the number 1 versus number 2 and just all the stakes and the legacy, the win streaks. It doesn't really get much better than what it was last night, Noah.
I completely agree with you. Again, could you argue other fights should be in there? But on that list I just listed off, that is by far the best fight on that
Yeah.
list. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's the biggest. I'm not saying it's the one that sold the most or is going to sell the most. But in terms of hype versus what we got, no
Mm-hmm.
fight has exceeded expectations more than UFC 284's Volkanovski versus Makhachev. This was just this was a fight for the fans in a lot of ways, Dom, because neither guy felt like they were in a ton of danger for the majority of it. Yeah, at one point, or maybe a couple different points, Volkanovski had his back taken by Makhachev. But after the first time, the way Volkanovski was so calm about being in that
Yeah.
position, it just kind of made you go, huh, well, I guess he is okay. So
Yeah.
neither guy really felt like they were ever in all that much danger. And typically that hurts the quality of a fight. You know, you kind of want that second level of investment where you see guys in compromising position nearly on the
Mm-hmm.
brink of being finished. It adds a lot of interest in the fight. But here, Dom, this was white knuckle on the edge of your seat just the whole time, all 25 minutes, Dom. I was leaning forward with my hands on the couch, ready to just burst if something crazy happened. And the way the fight just kind of flowed was beautiful. Round five, where Islam basically had the fight pretty much won. I know there is some debates about scorecards. Like some people, like you, actually scored it 3-2 Volkanovski. I had 3 Takchev. So
Mm-hmm.
the judges had it. I guess two of them had it 3-1 Makachev going into that round.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know.
You're right, and one judge had it 4-0.
Whatever. Yeah. So 3-1 going in. Okay. Huh. That's interesting. But going into that fifth round, when Volkanovski hurts Islam with about a minute left, and then by the time the bell rings, Dom, I don't know if I've ever actually done this with the fight before. There's been some fights that have been amazing. There have been a couple that I think are probably better than this one. But at the end of the day, I've never at the end went, God, I wish there was a round 6.
Mm,
God, I wish we could get a round 6.
yeah.
This was the fight that did that for me. So hats off to both combatants.
Yes.
Both guys somehow come out looking like, and I didn't know if that was really possible going in, Dom. You have this fight that is so massive for legacy, so much stakes to it. And part of the stakes is not just that the winner benefits so much from winning, but it's that the loser gets held back so much from losing.
Yeah.
A guy like Volkanovski with a win here, we were saying could have really catapulted himself into not just the best featherweight of all time discussion, but we're talking best fighter of all
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
discussion. Meanwhile, Islam is really still trying to etch his path, his career, kind of separate from the shadow of Habib, and he's done a great job of that. You look at what he did against Oliveira, but to go in here and beat the number one pound for pound fighter, I mean, that immediately puts you into that kind of discussion. Not necessarily best fighter of all time yet, but I'm talking like one of the best lightweights of all time.
Yeah.
Sure, it definitely is already in the discussion. And yet, when it was all said and done, Islam gets his hand raised. And now I'm hearing a lot of debates on if Volkanovski should even lose his number one pound for pound spot. Like, that's how he was here in
Yeah.
defeat. It was purely a rare feat in this sport because so much we talk about it a lot. UFC even does a little bit where the thrill and the agony. There's always for every guy that gets a belt wrapped around his waist and has the best of his life. There's a guy who just got did never going to be back in that spot, cut out of a job, whatever. There's always a give and take in the sport.
Of course.
But last night was truly a fight that was special because I felt like neither guy truly lost.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm lost. I'm at a loss for words following everything I just said there. It was truly just a magical fight. One I would argue probably one of the best fights of all time. That's a bit of
Mm,
recency bias for sure. But I think I gave it. I told you in like rating. I've been going back and watching big boxing
mhm.
fights, and MMA main events and just kind of score to try to find my like top of all time. I think I gave this one a 94. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful score. And again, I mean, we're really hitting this narrative home, but it can't be said enough. I feel like, Noah, when you have a fight this incredible, and then you add in all of the additional factors of, again, the pound for pounds, the champion versus champion, the 11 fight win streak versus the 22 fight win streak, just all of those factors into what was an amazing fight, regardless of if these were two champions or two people that just came into the UFC. That's what just sets this so much higher on that totem pole, man. And you're right. There was
mm,
no thrill and agony on this night for this main event. There was thrill and thrill. There was no losers, regardless of what the scorecards and records say. Islam has cemented himself as just a phenomenal, great fighter for those that still had their doubts. You know, when you look at like his strength of schedule and whatnot, but now he's really putting that to bed. He's really stating how good he is, and I'm excited to see what his next title defense could be. And for Volk to go up 10 pounds, very big size discrepancy here, and hold his all for 25 straight minutes, win rounds on the judges' scorecards is incredible. And he's already got his next featherweight, defense lined up. It was just everything in that co-main and main last night just worked so well together, I feel like. And it was just such a beautiful night to be a fan of this sport. That it was one of those types of nights.
let's switch gears and address the big debate going on right now, Dom.
Mm.
There was even a little bit of a debate in our own group chat, so I felt like we should talk about this because you actually didn't give an opinion on this. You decided to sit this one out. Maybe you were sleeping, but the debate being round discussion here. Volkanovski number one, Islam number two. Islam wins the fight. Do you believe that Volkanovski should still be number one pound for pound come Tuesday, I think, when the new rankings come out?
Listen, man, I wouldn't have any gripe either way, but if I'm answering, I think Islam they should flip flop. It should be now Islam number one and Volk number two, because at the end of the day, the number two pound for pound fighter, Islam Makhachev, beat the number one pound for pound fighter, Alexander Volkanovski. I understand Volk was the one making the sacrifice in a sense, right? Going up a weight class out of his comfort zone. I understand all that. And the pound for pound rankings are like, I don't know. I enjoy them probably a little more than others, but also at a time like this where people are debating, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, they don't really mean that much in the grand scheme of things. It just makes it look cool on a poster and stuff, whatnot. But yeah, I have no problem with Islam being number one. It's not like he didn't deserve it. I mean, the guy's on a 12 fight win streak now himself. He's a champion. He's got a title defense. I mean, look, he beat Charles Oliveira the fight before that was on a 10 fight win streak. Then he stops Volkanovski's 22 fight win streak and a champion. Come on. If you have a problem with if they flip flop or not, I think you just need to reassess, because it's just, who cares, man? I think it's pretty clear. I'll tell you this much. Regardless of who's 1 and 2 on Tuesday, these are the two best fighters in the world, and it ain't close. That's facts.
That was very beautifully said, Dom. I pretty much agree with everything you said. I hate pound for pound rankings. I'll be the first to admit it, and part of that's because depending on the fight that's being discussed, I find myself making a lot of statements that don't align with one another. I'm also the guy who said I felt like Usman should still be above Leon Edwards because of the way the
Yeah.
fight went. Yes, Leon got the win. It was an awesome knockout, but I still feel like today, as we sit here, that Usman. But then I'm also the guy saying that Islam should flip with Volk because he beat Volk. So it's like, it's there's no winning this discussion. I kind of hate.
Yeah.
That's why I just hate pound for pound rankings. So like, but even going in, like number one versus number two pound for pound doesn't mean much to me. But I viewed these guys as being the top two fighters in the anyway. So I did view them as number one and number two. So that's why it felt big. Not because the UFC rankings had them at number
Said
one and
so.
number two. It's because
Yeah.
I've seen with my own eyes that
Right.
they are number one and number two. And after what happened. It sort of aligns with a lot of what we said going in, Dom, this idea. And we got to, and of course, as we do, whenever we talk about an Islam fight, I feel like we get some pushback when we try to give any credit to an opponent of his. But the whole point was that what is Islam going to do when he goes up against a guy who has no weaknesses? And we saw that, and it was impressive. I mean, for the majority of this fight, Dom, Islam stood and traded
Yeah.
with Volkanovski. Like,
Yeah.
yes, he was very opportunistic with his takedowns. He did land a few of them and definitely stole a round or two by doing that. But, I mean, Volkanovski, he was. It's been almost like to a mythical status that these guys like Islam and Habib, their ability to get their hands on you and take you down, like you're not getting up. I don't know if I've ever seen it against
Right.
these two guys.
Yeah.
And Volkanovski did it like 3 or 4 times. I mean, it was just it was just I have no negatives to point out for either guy here.
No.
And I think anybody who nitpicks either performance here. I've seen a couple people talking about how Islam is somehow overrated or overhyped because of this fight. You guys don't know what you're talking about. I don't care what the odds were. I don't care how big of a favorite Islam was. Everybody knew that this fight was number one and number two, the two best fighters in the world, and Islam performed like the number one fighter in the world. And he had an amazing quote, early contender for Hot Mic Award, Dom. He said, "You like, don't like, I'm the best fighter in the world."
Yeah.
Checkmate.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Fucking, I love it. I love it. And to add on to that, another Mike moment, not that it was hot Mike status, but it relates to what you were saying in terms of what we saw in the cage. I think Volkanovski put it quite perfectly. He underestimated Islam in the striking, and Islam underestimated Alexander in the grappling. And it played out just like that. It played out perfectly over the course of those 25 minutes. And that's what made it such an incredible fight, because Volk performed leaps and bounds better than I think what many imagined he could in the grappling. And Islam put all the critics to bed about what his striking looks like when they were on the feet. And it's just, fuck, man. It was just awesome. It was awesome. I'd love to see it run back again. The 6th round talk, I saw Brett said it. You just said it on this show. Like, yeah, now that I look back and think, I don't know if I've ever wanted a 6th round in a fight, or at least had that thought, but I sure the heck had it last night, and I sure the heck have it right now on Sunday morning. So what more can you say? If there is someone out there, like No just said, that if you're critiquing this fight, you're critiquing either one of these guys, take a week off. Take a week off, reassess, come back stronger.
Get some help.
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
kidding. We're all just having fun here. But
Yeah,
one last thing before we move on, Dom. We got to talk about what's kind of next for these guys, and I think that this is pretty clear and obvious for one, Volkanovski, and we'll do him second because that'll lead into our co-main discussion. Yeah. But as far as Islam Makhachev, it feels like it's less clear. So my question, Dom, is there any fight right now that could potentially be made for Islam Makhachev that you would rather see than Volkanovski and him running it back?
Oh, shit. You just had to throw that in at the end of the question, didn't you?
I threw that in. Yep.
I mean, no, let's just say it right here. The biggest fight the UFC can make right now is Makhachev Volkanovski too. No, but I would love to see that ran back, but I can take a break from it because I after Yair's performance, I want to see Volk and Yair. You know what I'm saying? So for Islam, and I know we're gonna talk about this a little bit in the fight announcements. It's kind of been like said, but nothing signed or official yet. What about Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush? Come on, baby. Give Beneil his title shot, guys. He don't need to fight Charles. Come on. If anyone deserves a fight for the title right now at 155, that's not Alexander Volkanovski. It's Beneil Dariush, man. It's Beneil. Come on. I'm sick of saying one more. No, I'm sick of saying it for Beneil. I've done it too much.
Yeah. Yeah, how many times am I gonna have to hear that Beneil needs to take on the up and
Yeah.
coming killer who's
Yeah.
like ranked number 11 in the division? I mean, Dom is wanting Beneil to get murdered out here by everybody. But now I'm in a very weird predicament, Dom, because in order for Beneil to get that title shot, it looks like he's going to have to beat Charles Oliveira. And Dom, I'm torn. That is a fight. I can't watch that fight. I can't watch. These are two guys I've went at for the entire life of this podcast. That could be for the winner. That could whoever wins that could be my nominee for the Joey this year. Like that's how
Just
much I
like that.
support those two. That like I'm like it makes me want to cry that these two are fighting each other. I can we just like I agree with you. I'd rather Beneil just get the title shot, Charles
Yep.
fights someone else, and then hopefully Charles wins and then he gets a title fight. Like just can we not do this? Please? Please, I can't take it. I can't. So I would agree though that it feels like the next guy would be the winner of that fight if it happens in May as it's supposed to right now. But it feels like maybe is I mean there is some factors for Islam that would make you think maybe he won't fight again until the fall.
Yeah.
If I remember right, the whole thing for Habib, and I know Islam is sort of in a similar boat, is Ramadan and how
Right.
that sort of wipes out the summer for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would make sense that his next fight couldn't really be till what, September or October. That was typically how Habib sort of
Yeah.
went. It was like two times a year, fall, winter, spring, and then fall. So I get that. Yeah, the winner of that fight would be lined up pretty good to fight Islam next. If not them, I do think there is some contenders here, though, Dom, that I'm very interested to see Islam fight. Now that we've seen Islam, as amazing of a performance as it was, we've at least seen someone compete with him,
Yeah.
Alexander Volkanovski. We've seen someone put up a good fight, and even at the end of the fifth round, look like they were taking over that fight. That at least has made me more invested or more interested in seeing some of these contenders at lightweight get a shot. Rafael Fazayev or even
Yeah.
Arman Sarukian to get that fight again.
Yeah. For
Like,
sure.
or Beneil Dariush or whoever. Like, if Charles got another shot. Like, these guys, I feel like I at least have more hope for them to put up a fight and to maybe even get their hand raised, especially a guy like Arman who, yes, lost to Islam a while back, but it's so skilled everywhere that like I could really see that just being a very technical, a bit like this fight, like a B-rate version of this fight where they go 5 rounds and neither guy's getting a huge edge on the other, so it comes down to the scoring of those 5 rounds. And I'm lightweight in a good spot right now. I believe it. It feels like it's less clear. There's not a guy that just stands out immediately as the next challenger, but I think there's a lot of guys you could put in there and it would surprise you at how good the fight could end up being.
Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. Couldn't have said it any better.
And for Volkanovski, this will kind of transition into the discussion, Dom, because in your co-main event for the interim featherweight title, Yair Rodriguez gets the second round submission over Josh Emmett. Did it 4 minutes 19 seconds in. So because of that, Yair Rodriguez, your interim champion, likely will be fighting Alexander Volkanovski next for the undisputed. Did I say lightweight? I meant featherweight. Undisputed featherweight championship. So this fight was brutal. Let me start by saying that. Every shot that landed in this fight felt like it was like going to make me throw up. Like
Yeah.
every body kick that Yair landed, some of the fucking haymakers that Josh Emmett were landing, everything had, for as loud of a crowd as we had here, it almost felt like every impact shot, I felt like I was watching at the Apex. Like you could literally feel the power behind
Mm.
every shot. So this was really an impressive fight. It was actually really good, and I was
It was.
surprised to walk away saying that. I wasn't sure how good of a fight this would end up. I thought guys were great on their own, and but I just wasn't sure how they gel.
Yep.
Their
Yep.
striking styles being so different, And Dom, we got kind of a banger here. So, your thoughts on the fight? Your thoughts on Yair's performance? We did say on Friday that Yair was sort of the story here about a guy trying to realize his potential. Someone who the UFC had been invested in so much back to when Yair, I believe, was on Tough Latin America, and
Yep.
you know, through his early stages, he's had a lot of issues the last few years, some weird stuff in and out of the octagon. But now he's the interim champion. Is the potential realized in your eyes, or does he really still need to get that undisputed title to silence any sort of doubters?
Oh, the potential's close, but but see, that's the thing. Like, he's got the interim belt, so his potential's obviously right there where it once was. But it's like, well, he can't quite reach the potential until he becomes a champion. But unfortunately, that requires him to beat the number 2 pound for pound fighter in the world. So that's a bit of a
Yeah.
hard ask for someone. So I feel bad for the guy in that sense. But man, what a performance from him. And you want to talk about the main event exceeding expectations? Copy paste here. The problem is, I didn't know what my expectations were for this fight. I had them, but I don't know what they were. But I know that this fight exceeded whatever they were. That's for sure. It was really fun. Josh Emmett, man, his story of the injuries and 37 years old and coming out throwing bombs. He was hurting Yair, but I think we kind of nailed it on Thursday. Not that we're geniuses or anything, but we know our shit. We talked about just over the course as the fight continues to go, the arsenal of weapons on the feet for Yair felt like it would be too much. And it got implemented a little bit quicker here. Obviously, it ended in the second round via submission, but he was able to get to that submission because of the kicks, the body kicks, the head kicks, the leg kicks. The kicks of Yair were the X factor in this fight. Josh just didn't have the answer because he would get hit in the body, brutal. He would expect it next, and then Yair would go high or he'd go low. Then he'd go back to the body after 2 of those. So the way that Yair mixed it up last night, man, he looked really, really good. He has earned that interim title. He has earned the shot to fight Alexander Volkanovski to unify those belts. And man, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I know Volk is this, incredible. Number 2 in the world, all these title defenses in the win streak at 145. But I can't lie. I think Yair can put up a good fight. I think we're in for quite a scrap when those two step in the cage, Noah.
I was gonna say the same thing, Dom. That what I saw in that fight with Josh Emmett, I just pictured Volkanovski being in the cage, and I feel like Yair would do a lot of similar things. Like
Mm-hmm.
Volkanovski, being that his stature is shorter, those body kicks, then you mix it up and go high. It's hard for a guy of Volkanovski's size to get a good read on it because, again,
Yeah.
his head to torso, it's a little
Right.
closer than
Right.
a guy like you or me. So when you're going to the body so much, then you switch and go up high. That tends to work more on smaller fighters. And Volkanovski has really good grappling, but I'm not sure if he's really going to look to take down Yair a ton in that fight. He might. That might be the smart thing to do, but I don't know yet. I haven't really thought too much about that. So, yeah, crazy as it is that Volkanovski had the night he had, where his stock was raised. I already thought he was the best fighter in the world. His stock goes up. And yet I sit here, Dom, and I go, if him and Yair fight, Yair a pretty big underdog, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden that fight is very interesting. It's very interesting. Yair feels like the kind of guy, Dom, with his style, where it's so creative, it's a bit unorthodox, it's explosive, it's fast,
Mm-hmm.
it's very stylistic. It's a bit
Mm-hmm.
flashy in his kicks
Mm-hmm.
and combinations. You feel like he is capable of posterizing anybody on any given night.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Yeah.
also capable of course, losing fights. He's definitely lost a few fights in the UFC, but it seems like a guy like Volkanovski could implement a game plan where he sticks to the basics and keeps tries to keep uh, Yair kind of what's the word? Keep him standing a little bit, keep him from getting real wild and flowing. And you feel like
Yeah.
Volkanovski could just go 5 rounds of just outpointing him. Volkanovski's done that time and time again. But if Yair is able to get into that flow state where just going and he
Yeah.
threw a lot of crazy combinations that he does, something crazy could really happen there. It's a very interesting fight because both guys are so different when it
Oh
comes
yeah.
down to their styles, and those are the most fun fights a lot of times. So I'm beyond excited for that. It is a tough loss for Josh Emmett, of course.
Mm.
I know he wasn't getting a ton of respect or a ton of attention going in. We both recognize Josh Emmett is great. He deserved this opportunity. I'm glad he got this opportunity. He takes an account of himself, but he does fall short. He's 37 years old. I don't think we'll see him back in this position, Dom, and that's a bit of an agony, a thrill and agony
Yeah.
situation there. But hopefully there can be some solace in the fact that he did look pretty good, and honestly, at times looked like he may end up winning that fight. I mean, he was hurting Yair bad with some of those shots. It's just those body kicks, oof,
Yeah.
hurting me. So that's it for the main and co-main. We will have more to discuss on UFC 284. But let's talk about a little bit of rumors for the Ultimate Fighter, Dominic. Of course, it was announced that Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler will be the coaches on this season, and then they'll be fighting later this year. But the rumor that's going around, Dom, is that the cast for this season is going to feature a mix of new fighters and veterans, former veterans of the UFC, guys who have been cut or have gone away from the company. So when I saw that, the one thing I thought of, Dom, the one thing that I thought when I read this and saw this, whether I went, well, kind of makes sense why they signed Kevin Lee now, doesn't it?
Huh. Well, when you look into it, Noah. Wow. Okay. I
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
I see.
yeah. So that's definitely what I'm thinking is happening there. Kevin Lee and the Tough House. That actually is that's a really good name to get for that if that's really what they're doing. And I think he's kind of the perfect guy to put in that spot. Someone who
Mm.
had a lot of potential at one or still has potential, but at one time was fighting for an interim title against Tony Ferguson. Felt like he was a future champion in a lot of circles. He's sort of injuries and weight misses and weight shifting and underperformances that sort of plagued him the last few years. He has a shot to work himself back into a long-term contract with the UFC. I don't know. It's a little weird that they announced that they signed him if because they haven't announced they've signed anybody else for that would
Yeah.
fit for Tufts, and maybe he's not going to be in there, but I feel like he'd be the perfect kind of guy to put in there, right?
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna put former veterans in, Kevin Lee, that area of not a young up and coming guy, not out of his prime, just kind of in that sweet spot, a guy that clearly does still have talent and something to provide to the company, to the fans in terms of his fight style and whatnot. If they can hit that perfectly with a few other guys, and now of course I'm trying to think off the top of my head who some other options would be, but I think that is the perfect kind of matchups and the types of fighters that you would want is a Kevin Lee type of guy. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. What do you get? Do you like the idea of just this being the concept for this season? The whole mix of uh, ousted veterans and then new guys. Do you think that's a good idea?
I don't mind it. I think Tough is in a place where it's been copy and paste for so long, but now they're bringing Connor back to it. They got Chandler. It seems like they're wanting to try to bump it back up again, and I think this is a good way to go about that. Change it up a little bit. Was it Ultimate Fighter season 4? Matt Serra, veterans of the
Mm-hmm.
UFC that were on
Yeah.
that
Good
season.
call. Good shout.
So
Good shout.
I don't think there were new fighters on that season, but again, we've at least
No.
seen some of it. But now to mix in new fighters with old, it's an even different concept. So I like it. I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, and then on UFC, and then or tough. I think it was 25, where it was Cody Garbrandt, T.J. Dillashaw. That was called the. I forget what it was called. But it was also veterans.
Okay. Okay.
Outs to veterans. So they've done it twice. This is a little different because you have a mix. I actually think
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Anything to change it up, different flavor, on formula, I'm all for. Now, I do think there could be a real missed opportunity here because I don't know if you've seen, Dom, that there's been a Twitter movement to try to get Will Brooks onto this season.
That's who it
You know,
was. I knew I saw
Will
something.
Will Brooks, former Bellator champion, didn't have a very successful run in the UFC. A lot of
Yeah.
people saying it would be perfect to put him in because guess what, Dom? He's beat Michael Chandler not once but twice. And imagine the kind of, you know, the interesting dynamic to bring that guy in and maybe have him on Michael Chandler's team or have him on Connor's team and
If he's
Connor
on
just
Connor's
uses that.
team. Yeah.
Connor uses that as kind of bait, you know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he could be just playing possum here. But Will Brooks did. He thanked everybody in the community for like really trying to get his name out there and stuff. He said he was contacting anybody he could think of to try to make it happen. He came out later and said that they had already gotten the people for this season, so he unfortunately would not be a part of it. I don't know if he's just playing possum or not, though, Dom. It's possible. Because if not, what a missed opportunity. Like, how do you not think of Will Brooks when you're going through all these guys who are still fighting but are no longer in the UFC, who fizzled out, whatever? Will Brooks, a former Bellator champion, he beat Michael Chandler twice. How do you not think of him? What a missed
Yeah.
opportunity that would be.
Oh, dude, yeah, that would be so perfect. Hopefully, if he's playing possum and he's actually in come May when the show airs, that would be so badass. Like him and
Yeah.
Chandler coming across one another, just kind of with that awkwardness. And no, if he's on Connor's team, perfect storm for the shit talking. Oh, it would be
Yeah,
awesome.
because I think it makes sense too for Will Brooks and Kevin Lee because the other rumor is that 155 is going to be one of the divisions here in
Yeah.
focus. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything about the other division, but is there anybody off the top of your head that you could think of in terms of veterans that you would like to see back? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but I'm just curious if there's anybody.
No, I'm going to say one, and I'm pretty sure it would be 135 pounds because the guy just got cut over this last week. Sergio Kakramanov. How about you cut him and then you put him right back on the Ultimate
Yeah.
Fighter for this season, man? That's a fighter that should not have been cut. Had a very tough strength of schedule through his 3 fights in the UFC. A very good talent. I know he's not as much of a veteran as like a Will Brooks or a Kevin Lee, but he is a veteran of the UFC nonetheless. And so if you do 135 pounds and 155, the 2 best divisions in the company, by the way, I think that would be another guy I would throw in there.
You could have a potential for some guys that like from the PFL, like
Yeah.
why can't I think of our guy's name?
You're probably thinking Marlon Moraes is going to leave and then come back. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Why can't I think? All right, I found it. This is why I don't get mad when like Dana forgets Islam's name on stage
Yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
like, due to my own, like it's so easy, especially if you don't have the adequate amount of sleep or it's late or whatever. It's easy to just slip up on that. I get it. He's the promoter. I'm just a guy. I'm a fat dude just talking about MMA. But again, I'm just saying I feel him. I feel your pain, Dana, when you slip up like that. Olivier Aubin Mercier. Now I don't know what his contract's like with the PFL, and don't get me wrong, like I like the parody, and I wouldn't mind to see him just stick around in the PFL. But I'm just saying that if they were to bring in a middleweight division, OAM, tell me he wouldn't wreck shit. No.
If our man, OAM, the PFL lightweight champion, were to go from making a milli to coming back to the Ultimate Fighter, man, that would be something. That would be a story
Yeah, wow.
for the ages.
Honestly,
there.
when you put it like that just made me look really stupid, didn't it?
Hey, man, I've had plenty of those moments. You're good.
I was just trying to think. I couldn't think of any like veterans that I would like
But
because you called it.
I get where you're going, though.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some PFL guys, and I'm like, I did not even consider the money. So, actually, hear me out here.
Okay.
I got a perfect one. I have a perfect
boy.
one.
No, boy.
Especially if lightweight is one of the divisions. I believe this guy fought at lightweight. Dude, this is they have to do this. They have
Okay.
to. Although I don't know if one of our coaches would agree to it. Artem Lovov.
Oh. Will Brooks on Connor's team, Artem Lobov on Chandler's team. Booyah.
That's what I'm saying. Tell me,
Television.
Artem Lobov, that would not be ratings gold.
Yes.
I mean, talk about getting
Yes.
Connor in a. Talk about getting him in a tissy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know with the whole lawsuit I think that lawsuit got thrown out. Like Artem's lawsuit against Connor got thrown out. So now that there's no legal proceedings that are going on, Artem Lobov, kind of a guy that was only brought. It felt like he was only brought in because of his connection to Connor. What if his connection to Connor brought him back to tough? And I don't know. I saw some people saying that Michael Chandler should bring Artem in as like a coach to like get under Connor's skin. But I'm like, why do that when he could just come back as a fighter? Is he still? I'm assuming he's still fighting. So I don't know.
Dude. I think we need to be flown to Vegas. Let's hash some things out here. Dana and the boys.
Yeah. Dana hit us up. But that's enough on tough. We talked about tough quite a bit there.
That was a lot more than I expected. Everything's exceeding
I'm out
my
here.
expectations.
I'm out here trying to get millionaires to get paid $2,000 to fight 4 times in 3 days. I mean, I don't know what's going on. Fight announcements. We got a lot, and per usual, Dom, as they build up over the week, I'm just gonna list them out here for you. A couple of these are denouncements, which are never fun, but we'll just let you kind of go from there. You give which ones stick out to you that you like, any that maybe you don't like, and that's it. So, February 18th, that's this upcoming main event.
This is
It's been switched around. Taila Santos is out. It looked like the rumor, or I don't know if this has been confirmed, but I saw some reports that a couple of her cornermen could not get their visas worked out, so she decided to forego. Apparently, they got denied like multiple times. So, because of that, deciding not to go, completely understandable. But thankfully, Jessica Andrade is stepping up here. So now her and Erin Blanchfield, 5 rounds in the main event, February 18th. Then you have Dan Hooker out versus Jalin Turner. That one hurts a little bit. March 4th, UFC 285. Now, it looks like they're going to keep Jalin Turner on that card. And Jalin Turner's in an interesting position, Dom, where I don't know if the UFC can just pluck anybody into that fight. I feel like they have to get somebody with some credibility next to Jalin Turner. So hopefully there's still a good fight, to be made there. Michael Chiesa versus the Leech on April 8th, UFC 287. That one actually should have been on last week's, but the only fight announcements last week were so big that I felt like it just needed to be kind of pushed back.
That's fine.
Brandon Royval, Matheus Nicolau, April 15th, Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Maybe we make a drive. I don't know. I did look it up. It's quite a bit of a drive.
It is quite a drive.
Rumored for UFC 288, May 6th, Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. And then a week later on May 13th, 5 rounds, Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. So, Dominic, your thoughts? I saw you smirking a little bit over there. I mean, after you kind of let me talk myself into a ditch with the PFL coming to tough thing, I'm curious what I fucked up this time.
Oh, you didn't fuck anything up, but I think I'm about to tickle your fancy. But before I tickle your fancy, Jessica Andrade, can we?
Yeah.
Fucking savage.
And Erin Blanchfield.
And Erin Blanchfield. Savages. The clip of Yoel Romero. Savages. That is Jessica Andrade. Don't care. Honey Badger don't care. Throwback to 2011. She will fight anyone. You can be at 155, 115. She's going to fight anyone. It does not matter. It was already an awesome fight. How excited were we for Blanchfield Santos? Now she's fighting Jessica Andrade, a former champion, someone that's won fights in 3 different weight classes. If Blanchfield can get that win, holy guacamole, it's an even bigger win than what Taila Santos would have done. And if Jessica Andrade wins, she is officially there for title contention again. So that's awesome. Shout out to both those ladies for accepting that on literally a week's notice. This is where I'm going to hopefully tickle your fancy. Dan Hooker out. Sucks. Jalin Turner versus TBD. That's what was on the graphic last night. March 4th, UFC 285 on the main card. Jalin Turner is ranked number 10 at 155 pounds right now. He's got what? We got a little under a month, 3 weeks. Well, there's a guy at lightweight that has taken some short notice action before. and he was a Hot Mic nominee, and it's a man that Noah loves, and it's Renato Moicano versus Jalin Turner. Book it. That's the fight.
Wow. It definitely tickled me a little bit. That definitely tickled me. So, man, that would be great. That would be a lot of fun. Man, yeah, that's a great fight.
Anyway,
Yeah, so let me just say for the list here. I don't know how I feel about Andrade being put in for Santos on short notice. Like, I don't know if it makes me more excited for the main event or less excited or the same amount of excitement. I feel like I'm the same amount.
yeah,
Because you know how much Andrade is my favorite female fighter in the
Yeah.
UFC. Like, she's my favorite to watch.
Yeah.
She is arguably the second best fighter in two different weight classes in the UFC.
yes.
So I feel like even though Erin Blanchfield was already getting a huge challenge in Taila Santos, I'm curious what the odds are going to be since Andrade is taking this fight on short notice. Because you would think that might make Blanchfield a favorite, but Dominic, Blanchfield's ranked like number 10, doesn't have that kind of win to her name yet. Andrade is a former champion. Surely Andrade is going to be the favorite here, right? But or it'll be a pick. I mean, I do not envy the bookmakers on this one because I feel like whoever the underdog is, you have to hammer it, like just out of principle.
Yeah.
Because either way you slice it, the underdog clearly is going to have an advantage here, either due to the amount of high level fights they've had, their status as a former champion. You know, they've had tougher opponents.
Yeah.
Or you have someone in Blanchfield who has a really good wrestling base that could be one of Andrade's weaknesses.
Yes.
And also has been training for a 5-round fight this whole time while Andrade has not. So either which way you slice it, whoever the underdog is, look, I'm still like technically suspended, so I can't touch it. But Dom, I want to touch it so bad. I want to touch it so bad. I want to just put my entire life savings on the underdog for this fight.
Okay, real quick, there's not odds on like a lot of the big books that we use, but Bet Online, who a lot of like MMA fighters are sponsored with, they have a line right now. Jessica Andrade minus 159, Blanchfield plus 139 right now as we stand recording. So.
Yeah, I am going to put my life savings on Erin Blanchfield on the ghost bets. On the ghost bets.
Right, of course.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I don't have to do those anymore. But you get my point. In spirit, I will be putting my life savings on Blanchfield because whoever the underdog is, like to me, that's Andrade right now is a better fighter than Blanchfield.
Yeah.
But you take into account taking this fight on such short notice. You take into account the stylistic advantages Blanchfield reasonably would have over Andrade, and the fact that she's been training for a 5-round fight. It kind of evens it out. Like I feel like it's a very even fight on paper.
Can I pose a question?
Sure.
I'll probably pose the same thing when we're literally breaking this down next Friday, but that's neither here nor there. For Blanchfield, a win over Andrade here, short notice or not, still gets her to a title shot, right? No excuses for, like, if she beats Andrade, regardless of if it's short notice, to me, that's still an absolutely massive win over someone that has done so much in the women's divisions as Andrade. Blanchfield still title shot if a win here, correct? Huge win.
I want to say 100%. Like I do. Yeah. At first I was planning, if you had stopped like a sentence sooner, I would have said 100%, like no question.
Yeah.
And then somehow in that sentence longer, I like kind of thought, and I went, well, Taila Santos does still feel like she has to run. She has unfinished business. It feels like. Now hold on. I'm not saying that I would give it to her over Blanchfield if she beat Andrade, but also Manon Fiore is still in the mix here as well.
I wonder.
Well, she's hurt, I think, or she had an injury or something. That's sort of why she's kind of fallen out of the mix. Because 6 months ago, I think she was like the clear favorite to get the next title shot, and now Alexa Grasso kind of came out of nowhere and got it. Yeah. So let's say Valentina beats Alexa Grasso. I mean, Yes, I think the UFC are setting up Blanchfield like with the fight with Santos. I felt like the winner of that fight would have gotten a title fight. Since
Yeah,
Santos is out, UFC obviously know this card's not very good. Want to make a good main event still. But by putting Andrade here and Blanchfield again, ranked like number 10 in the division, you have to know she is being set up here for a win and she is in. So
yeah, yeah.
I don't know how it'll go exactly. But Dominic, I'm going to reiterate it. When I am reinstated fully into the bet slip, I can tell you my first couple moves I will make before even we get to the actual card itself that
Uh
week.
huh. Uh huh.
I'm going to go into the futures, and I'm going to put futures on Manon Fior, Erin Blanchfield, and, well, assuming she wins Saturday, and Taila Santos to be the women's flyweight champion by the end of the year. I think
Indeed.
they have to have great odds considering Valentina's dominance in the division.
Mm-hmm.
But also there are so many like I don't think people are giving this division enough credit for just how talented it is on Valentina at this point. I mean, those three names alone, I think all three of them have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Alexa Grasso is very good herself. I don't really see her beating Valentina, but
It's not
she's the one that's
impossible.
got the shot. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'll probably be my first move is I'll be putting three futures on those three ladies to assuming Blanchfield wins, and then you have Taylor Santos and Manon Fior. So
Woo. Anyway, shout out to the rest of those
yeah,
fights as well. I mean, they're
yeah.
all
Well, I was gonna say shout out to the rest of them, but why is Anthony Smith Johnny Walker a main event?
because if Anthony Smith isn't on a pay per view, he has to be a fight night headliner. No, we don't make the rules. That's just how it goes.
And I'm not one of those people. I don't understand why do so many people online not like Anthony Smith? I
I
don't
can't put up
understand.
with it.
I, I don't understand. People like really don't like him, and I don't
Yeah,
understand it because he seems like just a very nice guy.
he's like Nickelback of MMA. That's what Anthony Smith is.
I think he is a little bit like yeah, I fuck with that comparison because Nickelback's good, and I don't care what anybody has to say about it.
Exactly.
But I don't think this should be a main event. I mean, I think I sent it in the group chat and I said main event more like mid event because
saw.
this is a very mid main event here. Yeah, throw up tomatoes, like boo, this guy sucks. I know. Yeah, bad joke. But Anthony Smith is definitely still like in that top caliber. Although what was funny was when I saw this was announced or rumored, all the comments were saying Johnny Walker's going to knock his ass out. I'm like, oh, okay. So the Johnny Walker hype train is somehow back, I think.
It's
Dom.
back. It's back. Yeah.
I think it is because every comment was saying he's going to knock out Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith couldn't even hold off an intruder in his house. How's he going to hold off Johnny Walker? Like these comments, man, I was like, God damn. I'm like, you guys really don't like Anthony Smith. And I just don't get it. And also, don't understand how you're sleeping on him in that fight. I mean, Johnny Walker, respect to him. But come on. Put some respect, man. Return to the Mac.
Yeah, I love when that song hits. Also, real quick, now that I'm like looking at the list again, Chiesa and the Leech, Chiesa been out since November of 2021. The Leech, number 15. Chiesa, what was it? Number 11?
It was like number 11,
12?
I think.
Number 12. So,
okay.
interesting fight, huh?
Yeah.
I'm here for that one, man. I really think that's an intriguing fight for sure.
Every other fight on this list, I think, is very good. Royval Nicolau, by the way, that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Kansas City, I'm just saying, Dom, maybe we should consider.
9 hours, might have to fly.
That's about as close as we're ever going to get. Like, they don't want to come over to our side of the world, so it's just not going to happen. But no, all these fights, I sign off on all of them. I would sign off on Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker if it was not in a main event.
3 rounds. Okay.
But hopefully that fight night just has some good fights underneath it. Like, please, just at least act like you're trying UFC. Like, come on, please.
Wait a minute,
for us.
Noah. But what if that's the card in our area? That could be the one.
I will say that's probably a better main event than Curtis Blades' Chris Dawkins. So, I mean, I'll give it that. Even
All
though,
right.
no disrespect to that card in Columbus, there was some good fights underneath it. I'm
Oh
just
yeah. Oh
saying,
yeah.
I would probably say Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker is a better main event on paper in terms of what both guys stand right now. Because
Right.
Johnny Walker may be back. I might be sleeping on him a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, by the comments, I think people are acting like Johnny Walker is going to beat John Jones again. So,
Yeah.
interesting. Let's get into the rest of UFC 284. Really interesting discussions we're having on this.
It's been a day.
On this episode. Let's start with Jack. Jackie Moon, as Dominic likes to call him. I'm still not sure if I sign off on the nickname or not.
You got it.
I'm not sure. But Jack Della Maddalena gets the first round submission over Randy Brown. 2 minutes 13 seconds in. Continues his streak of first round finishes in the UFC. Yeah, I've seen all I need to see. You can give him anybody at this point. I'm there for it. This was a huge test, I thought, because I think Randy Brown is super talented and obviously friend of the show. So there is a little bit of bias there.
Of course.
Although Dominic's, I don't know if Dominic's a true fan of Randy Brown because he of course he like celebrated Jack's victory and then he sends a text like, "Oh man, but I feel so bad for Randy Brown. Damn it, man." I was like, this guy. I'm like, shut up, Dom. Like, you're not a real fan of Randy Brown. I'm a real fan. I was hurting for the guy.
Noah. I did an untracked bet on Randy Brown money line.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I did. But I don't really want to talk about my bets from yesterday because it was awful and I'll never financially recover.
We will get. Yeah. I'm actually, quick question. Did you actually make a graphic for the bets? Because I didn't put it on the script.
Yeah,
so
it'll be on. It'll be on.
If you even have it. Okay, cool. So, yeah, well, we'll talk about it for like a second, then we'll just skip it. But Randy Brown, Dominic, not a real Randy Brown fan, even though that did help his case there. But Jack, I've seen all I need to see. Get him any fight he wants. Anybody, top 15. Randy Brown's still great, but he ran through a buzzsaw, and I've seen all I need to see. He has checked every box, and I'm ready to see him tested against the top of the division. What do you think, Dom?
Copy paste, and I saw Ariel tweet this, and it's so true. Jack Della Maddalena started his career 0-2, getting finished 2 times. He's won 13 or 14 straight fights ever since, and 4-0 in the UFC, 4 first-round finishes. Now we're doing it against Randy Brown. Oh, and by the way, he submitted him? What? Are you kidding me? This guy is good, man. Ever since I saw him on that fucking Contender Series fight, I knew we were on to something special. He's from Australia. He was literally from Perth. He was the hometown boy of all the Australian fighters last night. The place went bonkers. I'm here for top 15. Problem is, number 15 is Li Jingliang. He's booked against Chiesa, like we just said. Are we really going to give Jack Della Maddalena his first top 15 opponent against Michel Pereira? Neil Magny? I guess I'm not saying no to it, Noah, because I think he deserves top 15 next. You got to give it to him.
I think the Neil Magny fight makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately,
I don't mind
for
it.
Neil Magny.
Yeah, Neil Goldman from Gilbert Burns, top 5 to unranked Jackie Moon.
But wouldn't that just be the most Neil Magny move ever to take that fight?
Oh, it's 100%. 100%, yeah. That's a fight he would do for sure.
And I think that's actually the fight that will happen next. I'm going to go ahead and call my shot. Babe Ruth it. Pointing to the stands. I bet Neil Magny will fight. We'll fight Jackie Moon. Every time I say that, though, I'm like, Jackie Moon. I don't know. I don't know if I'm messing with the nickname. But next up, Dom, they did announce who will be inducted into the Pioneer Wing of the class of 2023 UFC Hall of Fame. None other than Jens Pulver, Dom, the OG lightweight champion. It kind of made sense to announce it on this card. He is the guy that started the division, really got it rolling, was the original champion, has wins over guys like BJ Penn. Very underrated career. It was definitely at a time. It was almost entirely boxed into that time period before the UFC really took off with that original
Yep.
Tough boom. Yes, he
Yep.
came back and coached the Ultimate Fighter against BJ Penn, but that was after he had been through a lot of wars. He was no longer that same guy anymore. He kind of got exposed for it. He was also dealing with a lot of personal issues at that time. I when they showed him on his because he does a lot of
Yeah.
content for the UFC on their Twitch. So
Yep.
I think one of the things he does for each card is he does like a live watch along or whatever.
Hmm.
And they actually cut to him
Yeah.
watching the announcement and to
Mm.
see the raw emotion. Dominic,
Mm.
it happened again.
Yeah. Yeah.
This hearted man right here, I shed a few man tears. I did.
Yeah.
I did,
Yeah.
especially when he hugged his son.
Oh. Oh.
Like, that father's thing right there. Like, me and Big, we haven't had that kind of embrace in a while. And I was just like, man. And I'm sure you and Big Dave do that all the time. Just hug and cry and
Yeah. Of
sing
course.
kumbaya.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It
what
was
a moment it
beautiful.
was for Jens Pulver. Yeah, I'm kind of getting misty eyed just talking about it. And he's been wanting this for so long too. That's what I love about it is the UFC Hall of Fame. We have, well, actually, I shouldn't say we. At times, I've trivialized it. I've been like, is it really that big of a deal? It's limited to just UFC guys. If you're not in good graces with the company, you don't get in. If you're still fighting in other promotions or whatever, guys like
Hmm.
Frank Shamrock should be in there, but they're not. Like it feels like,
Right.
and then sometimes guys get in, like Matt Serra, where it's like, should they really be in the UFC Hall of Fame? Even
Hmm.
though he is a legend in his own right, but as a
Right.
fighter, should he really have been in there? But to see a guy like Vince Pulver, who this meant everything to him,
Yeah.
that bit of recognition, that's pretty special, and
Yeah.
that definitely puts it in perspective too. That this is not the way I want it to come off. Like one man's trash is another man's treasure, but in a way, it kind of is something that we all sort of look at and roll our eyes at. Meant everything to
Yeah.
an OG, a pioneer. So very happy for him.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better, my friend.
Next up, Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Minifield had. I mean, it was a fight.
It was. It was.
You know what? That sigh right there was very fitting, but I'm still not sure exactly what that
Like,
means. Like, what are your
yeah.
thoughts here in terms of did you enjoy this fight? It went to a majority draw, by the way. Dom, did
Yeah.
you like this fight?
I think
Do
I
you want to
did.
see it run back?
I think I do. It was interesting. It was not a bad fight. I mean, it was kind of just a sloppy brawl at times. Other times there'd be just some, grappling that wasn't anything too crazy, but they were trying to win a round. And then the point deduction. Shout out to Mark Goddard. Really is probably the best in the game today. I think as a ref, he was not fucking around, dude. He's like, you grab the fence and it clearly maintained your position on the feet so that you didn't get taken down. Point. Boom. Bang. You know what? That's to be fair. I know we weren't huge on the headbutt last week, but we've had two back-to-back weeks where the referees were no tolerance. You did something wrong, boom, point. Back-to-back weeks. You don't see that very much. So maybe we're starting a trend forward. As long as it starts to be consistent, then maybe Chris Tognoni's headbutt started a trend. Maybe, just maybe. So yeah, I'm kind of here for it. Let him run it back. I don't think again how it went the distance is still beyond me. We'll talk about that again in a second for my bets, but it was fun. And then, like for Jimmy Crute, he's holding his own in the top 15. But this fight didn't tell me he should fight forward. And Alonzo, I think, showed enough to where he still clearly has a chance to earn his right into the top 15. Therefore, run it back. Both guys also want to do it, so I think that makes things easier. There you go.
This was the ready to rumble UFC fights.
That's a good one.
That's actually not a very fitting comparison, but what I'm going off of there is a fight that's actually really it's like bad, like it's not a good fight, but it's almost so bad it's good. Like it's so fun to
Yeah.
watch, you can't take your eyes off of it.
Yeah.
Sloppy. It was a sloppy Joe fight, and it was a lot of fun watching it. I don't know what to really say about either guy. moving forward. Can I say that Alonzo Menifield? I mean, I feel like he takes a bigger L here than Jimmy Crute. What do you think of my assessment there? That Alonzo Menifield had Jimmy Crute out on his feet at the end of
Yeah,
round one and
yeah, I
beginning of
forgot
round
about
two,
that. Yeah,
and somehow couldn't finish that fight.
yeah.
I think
Well,
Alonzo Menifield, that's one he's going to look back on and be like, man, how did I not get it? How did I not get it done? You know?
yeah. I remember that first round moment specifically where he kind of like Jimmy went for a takedown because he was kind of out of his wits. Alonzo sprawled very well, but then just kind of maintained and stayed on top rather than standing up. I do think he watches that film back and goes, "Oh damn, if I let him stand there and land three more good shots, probably put him away." That's true. I forgot
Yeah,
about
it
that
felt
moment
like
until you brought it
he
up.
was always like 2 or 3 shots away. And what's funny is at first, like in round one, I'm going, oh, he's trying to like preserve some of his gas tank. That's the thing about
Hmm.
Alonzo Minifield is he can be really good for like a round and a half, but then he really tails
Yeah,
off by the end. So I thought, okay, he's trying to preserve himself a little bit. He'll probably get the in round two. Dominic, this preservation that I thought he was trying to do, he looked gassed in round two.
yeah, they
And
were
I was
both
like,
gone.
whoa, like,
Yeah,
and I know there was a lot of grappling early in that first round, and that definitely takes a toll. And I am no guy to be talking about another man's, especially guys that are in that kind of shape, their gas tank. But I'm just saying what I saw that
right.
ultimately, like, I was shocked at just how quickly Menafield was out of gas. Crute made more sense because he was so battered and
Right.
hurt.
Yeah, yeah,
But Alonzo Menafield, I was like, I couldn't believe what I was watching. And yes, that fight to not go to like for it to not go to distance, that's kind of crazy. I'm fine with it being run back. I mean, Menafield called for it to be run back there, like in
well, that
Australia.
won't happen. Yeah.
I think the UFC said they're going back to Australia this year, so I mean
Oh
maybe it
shit!
will.
Did they really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm here for
Because I
that.
don't know if you noticed, but Dana didn't do a post-fight press conference, but they had some other dude. But he said that they're going back to Australia. So that guy said it. So I guess that's
Okay.
true.
Okay. Cool. Well, yeah. Let's do it then.
Yeah. So maybe they do run it back in Australia. At first, though, I was kind of like, why is he calling for it to be run back in Australia? Like, when are they going to be back there? But anyways,
Right.
last one here.
Mm,
Modestas Bukauskas, his second run in the UFC, starts a bit like first with the win. He gets it done via unanimous decision over Tyson Pedro, the two-time Cage Warriors champion, Modestas Bukauskas. Gets himself started this second time in the UFC off right. Dom, I know it went to a decision, and Pedro maybe had his moments, but I felt like Modestas kind of controlled this entire fight. Like this was a bit what I feared for Tyson Pedro, a guy who had
mhm.
been. A lot of people thought he was ready to make this big run, but a lot of the reasoning for that was due to him really beating up on some underwhelming opponents before. He gets a guy with some credibility in Modestas and just did not look like the same world beater he did the last couple times out. What did you think of this one?
No, I think that's exactly what it was. I think Modestus also is just. I said it on Friday. He's much better than a 13-5, 1-3 UFC record. And I think it's pretty clear if you
Yeah.
look at the way he fought last night. It's obvious that he is. And over the course of 3 rounds, he was just the all-around better fighter than Tyson Pedro. You described your thoughts on Pedro so well on Friday and just now again. Just kind of like he's good. He's this brute of a man that has this power. But all in all, especially when you look at like the betting odds sides of things, he probably shouldn't be, a minus 300 nearly against a guy like Modestus, regardless of what the records say. And it showed here. I think that picture got painted perfectly in this fight. I don't really know the upside or the ceiling for either of these two guys, but there's something about Modestus that has me just curious. Like maybe, just maybe, if he can hit this stride into his prime perfectly, maybe he can do something. I don't know. Like the way in which he moves, the way that he's built, the way that he strikes. I'm just excited to see what he can do. I am.
I mean, Dominic, a two-time Cage Warriors champion, ain't nothing.
Yeah.
It ain't
Right.
nothing.
Right.
I mean, that's about as good as you get on in terms of the regional scene, like on your come up. That's you got them, you got LFA, you got Cage Fury. I mean, those are really the guys that are that you build that credibility with. So for to be a two-time champion there, I mean that's something. So I get what you're saying. I still think Tyson Pedro is a good fighter. It's just I mean, he got exposed a little bit here because again, that's why it doesn't really work when you do this whole like building someone up by having him beat on guys that are nowhere near
Yeah.
their level or aren't even
Yeah.
UFC caliber. Because at the end, eventually they have to fight
Yep.
someone, a worthy challenger,
Yep.
and they get exposed. I thought it was actually telling that I knew Pedro would be a pretty big favorite, but the fact that he was only like a
Yeah.
minus 250 or 300 or whatever favorite, considering his previous couple fights, he was at like minus 900, minus that, whatever it was. I thought that was very telling because you know that the market has inflated him so much up to this point. But now all of a sudden they're like, yeah, he's a big favorite, but it's like minus 300. I'm like, if I were a betting man, which I am, but it's still from MMA, I would have sprinkled on fucking Modestas, and that's why Dominic's such an asshole for suspending me. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
I think I went 2 for 3 on my when I called my shot. I said for those 3 fights that we just talked about on the rest, it was going to be an emphatic performance one way or another. But it was either going to be these young hotshots kind of making a big splash, or these big underdogs surprising everybody. I feel like 2 or 3. I kind of went there,
Yeah.
and it could have been 3 for 3 if Alonzo Menifield just fucking
Yeah.
I don't know
Finish the
just
job.
finished the fight.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the below average best slip, Dom. I'm sure you're excited to talk about this.
Yeah.
So, now we're doing this right with no. You're going to be putting a graphic on the screen, correct? So,
Correct.
just what. First off, tell me where do we sit year to date right now?
Oh, that is year to date. Year to date is actually not too bad, thank goodness. So we are at minus. Is this? Let's see. Is this all time? Yeah. Okay. This is for this year. Minus 3.73 units. So
Okay,
you know,
that's actually not bad. Okay, so I didn't know where we were before this card.
yeah,
So okay, that's we can definitely come back from that.
yeah.
You'll still have to carry for a couple more weeks, but just go over some of your picks. I know you had a lot of bad beats on this card, and how are you feeling coming out of it?
Yeah. So this is where it gets funny, though, when we talk about that year-to-date number, minus 3.73. Well, last night was minus 3.21. So that's how bad of a night UFC 284 was for me and for the bet slip. And let's just break down. I don't want to talk about it for ages and ages because I might throw up. But we had 5 bets last night, okay? We went 1-4 on the evening. The lone win, a plus 125 money line for Blake Builder. Shout out to him, his UFC debut. Pretty fun fight with Shane Young. He looked good. Good on him. Loved cashing an underdog money line. We always do. Now, this is where it's going to get fun because we're going to talk about these 4 losses real quick. The first one, I'm just going to hit quickly, even though it's not in order, but I did have Melsik Bagdasarian minus 105 money line against Josh Kulabau, Australia zone. I just thought that line, having Melsik at pick'em odds from what we've been seeing from him, was almost a steal. I thought it was worth a sprinkle for him to win that fight. Well, he tried to choke slam Josh Kulabau at the pre-fight weigh-ins, and that backfired badly because Kulabau got a second-round submission. So, egg on my face, that's okay. We're 1-1. But this is where it got fun. Because the first fight of the night, we had Zubaira Tukhugov fighting, okay? He was one leg of a 3-leg money line parlay. He was fighting I don't know if it's Elvis, but he was fighting Brenner. Okay, Charles Oliveira in the corner of Brenner, and he arguably was robbed. I don't want to say it just because it might look bad because he was on a bet for me, but it was as close to a robbery as you can get if you don't want to call it that. And he lost a split decision. First fight of the night. So the parlay's dead upon arrival, and I knew that when that happened, the vibes for the rest of the night were done. It was chalked, but we lived to fight on because there were 12 other fights to go to. We had 2 violence parlays, Noah. 2 legs each. All 4 legs, though, were to not go the distance. Shanus and Jenkins inside the distance. Crazy fight. Jack Jenkins looks like a really, really good fighter, by the way. If you didn't get to see that fight, guys, it goes the distance somehow. He doesn't get the finish. Crazy fight. Jamie Mullarkey and Francisco Prado. Are you kidding me? I've now lost back-to-back times on Jamie Mullarkey to not go the distance, and he's went through a decision. So he's probably going to be on the ban list. Maybe not necessarily him, but his fight props. So we lose that one. And then the other parlay, which is even more painful than that one, Tyson Pedro and Modestas Bukauskas inside the distance. Thought it was going to be a banger. Someone was getting put to sleep. Nope. It's going to go the distance. Not even a ton of action, really, in that fight for the most part. Then the real kicker here, Jimmy Crute and Alonzo Minifield inside the distance. Are you kidding me? Not only does it go the distance, we have a point deduction, and there's not even a damn winner. There's a draw. It was just an absolute sickening night for me betting MMA, and it was a sickening day for me sports betting across college basketball, NBA, hockey, and the UFC. It was a disaster. The worst betting day of my life, of my career. But we wake up, the sun shines, and we go again, Noah.
Yeah, I wish I could sit here and tell you that it gets better.
Oh, I know it doesn't. I know.
You may have some good days, that you'll string along, but just remember that day you had yesterday, that is always going to come back again.
Yeah.
So just get used to it.
Fair enough.
Anyways, let's move on to the closing statements. The point of the show where me and Dominic can talk about anything and everything, MMA related or not. So, Dominic, do you have any closing statements? Monday edition.
Oh, man. I don't know if I have anything really. We've already talked about the Super Bowl. We're recording this on Super Bowl Sunday, but I am going to stick with my guns. I'm going to stick with the Chiefs. We'll see come Monday when you guys are hearing this if I was right or wrong. But other than that, we talked about so much fights and stuff today. My brain's a little bit fried.
Yeah, I haven't checked out. Actually, that's what I'm going to do when we get off recording. Some of the props for the Super Bowl on DraftKings and FanDuel and stuff. But you guys can, when you're watching this, maybe you'll be able to go back and see, if I hit on some of these. I'm taking the Eagles on the spread. I'm taking the Gatorade color to be yellow.
Love that.
I'm taking the over 2 minutes 7 seconds for the national anthem performed by Chris Stapleton.
Okay.
I think he'll take his time with that. Anything else?
First song for Rihanna at halftime? You doing that one?
No, I don't listen to Rihanna like that. I don't know. S&M. That's the first
Booyah!
song.
Book it. That's got to be plus 20,000 right there.
That or Disturbia. There we go. That's
I did see a lot of
one I
people
know.
saying Disturbia. That one could be it.
So, I'm trying to think if there was any other. Maybe like a field goal prop. Sometimes I've been seeing those hit a lot, like an over 2.5 field goals or something.
Coin toss.
Oh, tails. I did tails for the Super Bowl. I did like $100 for tails on the Super Bowl last year. Missed. So that's
It's got to hit this year.
that's tough. I did see a story though on TikTok because I've been more into TikTok sports betting content and stuff. That's all going on. Jake Paul has that betting company, Better or whatever now.
Yeah.
Well, there is a page on TikTok that I follow. It's these couple guys that just give out picks and do whatever. Well, I didn't realize that they're called like Betting Corner, I think is their name or something. but they like work for Better, I guess, like or something, or they were the original company that got bought by Jake. I don't know how it worked, but basically their company that's now Better, or I don't know if they built the software. I don't know how it goes, Dom. But regardless, they were telling a story. They showed a TikTok. So for the Super Bowl last year, they were like near bankruptcy, their company,
Okay.
and they bet like I don't know if it was it 5 grand or it might have been even more than that on heads for the coin toss to like keep their company going, and it hit. So if they had missed, they would have lost everything.
Wow.
That's
That's quite a
degenerates
story.
right there.
Yeah. That is quite a story, actually. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I might have to bet on the
Yeah.
coin toss.
Yeah. So those are some of the props I will be doing. I might take over on Jalen Hurts passing yards. I kind of like that one to hit because I don't expect this game to be a blowout by any means.
Mm-hmm.
And typically when Jalen Hurts goes under, it's because they've been building up big first half leads on teams and then they just run
Yeah.
the ball real heavy in the second half. Don't think that'll happen here. So my name's Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We are but just two of the below average Joes, and we'll see you guys on Friday.